up, everybody? Episode 12 here. Merry Christmas. It should be Christmas Day here for people that celebrate Christmas. If not, happy holidays. I hope you're enjoying your day. It's rainy and cold currently where I'm at, and I'm not enjoying it. It's muddy in my yard, and it sucks. We're going to start the first episode, and I don't know if they're all going to be in a row or if I'm just going to kind of touch and go. But first episode talking about wheel tub fabrication. Now, I've never made wheel tubs by hand before. I know a decent amount of metal fabrication, and I have a good understanding of what needs to get done. So I'm just going to walk you guys through my process and how I think I'm going to tackle it. But I have a strong feeling that I'm definitely not the most qualified to do this. So there may be others out there. And I just noticed I got a light falling. Let me clip that back in. There we go. Look at that. All better. So I got some of it started today. You remember a few episodes ago, we talked about some paper templates that I had cut out. And I'm still going to use these. These are still going to come in handy, especially when it comes to fitting the wheel tub to the outer fender and everything on the inside of the car. But really, to do these ones, I feel like I just need to start with some metal and start trimming and cutting for the most part. So what I got is I went and picked up a couple sheets of 24 by 48 22 gauge cold roll. I believe it's 1008, so 1008 series. You should be able to bend it, anneal it, do whatever you need to do to it, cut it, weld it, and it should work great. It's kind of what I've found to be kind of an industry standard for what people are using for things like wheel tubs and just general sheet metal fabrication inside the car. Some things are a little bit thicker. You know, some things get into the 20, 18, 16 gauge. But for this particular project, I think I'm going to go 22 gauge. It's thin, it's lightweight, and I hope it works. I may have to reinforce it if it's too noisy, which I have some ideas of how to do that with basically kind of like double walling some spots and doing some like silicone bronze work. I think we can get it figured out. So what I want to talk about today is how I tackled making the arch. I mentioned when I did the paper template that I didn't quite nail it. You notice that in the vertical it's 17, to my right it's 17, and then to my left it was 16 and 7/8. So I was a little bit off on that, and what we tried doing was kind of clamping a bolt in the center and using some string. I definitely knew that wasn't the best way to do it. You definitely want something solid, but we were just trying to do it quick and hoping that it was going to be accurate, and it wasn't. It was ended up being a waste of time. I should have did what I did for the metal in the first place. So what I got is I took a magnet here. This is literally just a magnet hook, and this is just some thin galvanized metal. It was some leftover sheet metal from doing my ductwork up in the garage there for the furnace. So what I did is I put a hole in it on both ends. Okay, this particular wheel tub, I'm going to be radiusing the edge to kind of give it like an OEM look. You know, most of your OEM stuff always has some kind of radius edge to it. You know, it's not just two flat pieces welded together. I'm going to attempt to give it a nice radius. So I took the piece of sheet metal. The wheel tub diameter is 34 inches, but I grew it by 1 inch on the radius, so 2 inches total. So that means that from center to outside, I needed 18 inches. So I punched a hole. I got a Whitney punch. Now, you could easily just clamp this in between some wood, some aluminum, just something thicker to hold it nice and sturdy, and drill a hole through it. Drilling a hole through something this thin, chances are this is just going to wad up and rip a finger off. So you definitely want to clamp this in some thicker stuff and then drill through it. Or use something like this, Whitney punch. If you don't have one of these, they are super handy. You can swap out for several different sizes. Punches through pretty thick sheet metal. I think it can punch through like, I think up to 18 gauge, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I've punched 18 gauge with it. I've punched some pretty thick stuff, plastic, some different materials. Well worth its weight in gold. Usually you can find them on Facebook Marketplace for a pretty good deal. You definitely want to buy them used, brand new. They are super expensive and definitely not worth the price brand new if you're not going to use it a lot. So 18 inches center to center. And that I knew would give me exactly what I wanted, okay? So I put this like that on my sheet metal. I'm gonna slide this back into place here. Okay, so I put that on my sheet metal like that, and I marked the center. I made sure I had enough room over here. I made sure that I had enough room over here on my sheet metal. Then I took a fine tip Sharpie. Here we go. And then I punched a hole just big enough for a tight fit on the Sharpie, okay? This way, when I'm drawing, I can pull this tight. Now what I did is I left this long up here because what I would do is with one hand I would pull like this and rest my finger, and then the other hand was holding down on the Sharpie. So I had both hands walking it around, one hand pushing down on the Sharpie, one hand stabilizing this. And then this is a super strong 25-pound magnet. It's definitely not moving when you're pulling on it. So I walked it all the way across. And what I ended up with was something that is exactly what I wanted. Now this piece I can save. I can punch holes in it bigger, I can punch holes in it smaller. This will be something I could use for a long time. So once you make one of these, keep a hold of it. If you notice when the video started, I'm just gonna hang it up over here. And there it is. It'll stay there. And if I need to make another piece, which I will, because that should do both door jambs, and then I'll have 2 more to do for the inside wheel tub. So I'll have to do this 2 more times. This one I'm gonna cut in half because I only need 90 degrees to do this area here, and I'm gonna radius it. Before I talk about how I'm gonna radius it, I want to talk about some things of how I cut this. Now, if you have a metal shear, Harbor Freight supposedly has a pretty good metal shear. Honestly, I'll probably end up picking one up. I'm gonna be doing a decent amount of sheet metal work on this car, and cutting this how I cut it was a total pain. I don't have a big bandsaw. My jigsaw, I do have a metal cutting jigsaw that I use, and it works great for thicker stuff, but for this thin stuff, it just kind of wads it up and deforms it. So what I ended up doing is actually using a cutoff wheel in my die grinder and just slowly walking it all the way around. I had a flashlight sitting like this, hanging off the bench. The flashlight was so I could see the line very clear. And I'm just walking this around, obviously with a cutting wheel on it, not the flap disc, but I'm walking it, scoring it, and then going deeper and deeper and deeper until it eventually cuts through. And then that way you can maintain the radius without flat spotting it, okay? After I made it all the way around like that, every now and then I would cut sections off because this stuff would end up, you know, hanging or getting in the way. So you can see that, you know, this is definitely just cut with my die grinder, but it's cut on a really nice radius. If you do a little section at a time, score it, go a little deeper, score it again, go a little deeper, score it again. And you just keep that process all the way around. And honestly, it doesn't take that long. It probably only took me maybe 5 minutes to make this whole cut. So cut sections off so it doesn't hang or end up folding this stuff up, because once this stuff starts hanging, it's very thin. It will just bend up, and it can bend up your ends. You can actually see here, actually, I don't know if you can see that, but this one, it had a section on it that was starting to hang, and I should have cut it sooner, but it actually started tweaking the end real quick, which is fine because I have about this much that's actually past the radius anyways. So Once you get that cut off, then you go to your flap wheel and you're gonna clean it up. You're gonna clean up this whole edge with your flap wheel. Once that edge is clean, what I recommend is using a air DA or a bigger electric DA with some 60 grit, and that will make this surface really good. I just use this little wood polisher, you know, wood sander. It works pretty good. I'll show you what kind of turns out. You know, it kind of gives it a nice little surface, nice little finish, you know, and that'll look good. This will hold paint real well, and then this will give me a good surface to make marks on it, cut, and then do the radiusing. So I hope that kind of gave you an idea how I go about laying out an arc like this. It's super accurate. I mean, this thing's easily, you know, it's basically line to line, spot on when you measure it from end to end, top to bottom. Super happy with how the metal strip worked and the magnet. I highly recommend doing it if you have a project like this. And then keep your metal clean too, you know, sand off both sides, get that mill scale off, because once you start bending it and tweaking it and getting it closer, it's going to be harder and harder to clean that stuff off. So when you get to this point, go ahead and clean it and you'll be thankful for it. And then I'm going to touch on how I'm going to radius real quick, but it'll definitely be in another video of a full breakdown. I'm basically making a wood buck, and a buck is something that you use to form metals. It's used for other things too, but it's like a mold essentially for forming things. So I got some 3/4 inch thick plywood here, just a piece of scrap I found at my dad's house, and I got some different radius cutters here that I'm going to use in my router. And what I'll end up doing is cutting a 34 inch section. I'll use this, but instead of the magnet, I'll screw it. So I'll run a screw in through the big hole and then punch me another hole at 34 inches. So then I'll radius at 34 inches. I'll router that edge so it has a nice curve to it. And then I'll make a second half circle that's at like 33 inches probably, just a little bit lower, and then I can clamp those two together and I can work the metal around the radius. So you guys will see me do that. I'll probably end up doing a time lapse with that process because I think it's more complex and it can help people actually watch it. And then another thing, if you guys are watching this still, if you made it this far through the video, can you please comment or send me a message on Instagram? Do you guys want to see more time lapses of me working or more sped up video of me working? You know, I know that sometimes for me, when those parts come on in YouTube videos and there's that like copyright free music playing and it's just somebody, you know, going at it, you can't always tell what they're doing. It's hard to get camera views. And for me, it's super time consuming if I'm trying to bounce the camera around. So, but if it's something you guys really want to see, I can at least get you time lapse. You know, I can set the camera up so that it's like facing down on the bench or facing in the car. I've done a couple of clips like that on Instagram. That's not too big of a deal. So I can do more of those if you guys want. Let me know. Enjoy the rest of your holidays. Enjoy the rest of your Christmas. If you guys are home spending time with family or friends or just having some time to yourself, enjoy it. All right? Have a good night.